Why there is a hole at the bottom of a lock. Most frequently, these holes are there to allow water that somehow got into the lock to drain. If the lock is used outdoors, it's pretty likely to get water in there at some time, for example from rain. The sooner that water gets out of there, the less likely the mechanism is to corrode to a point where the lock might become impossible to open. In other cases, if water gets into the lock and freezes without expansion room, it could damage the lock or cause it to seize until it thaws. Obviously, letting the bulk of the water drain out of the bottom will be. Why are the two settings on a stapler? Often staplers have a rotatable plate with two different grooves for bending the legs of the staples. The default one bends the legs inwards, the alternative one splays them outwards. The alternative mode is called pinning. This method is by far the least known and utilized stapling method. It is used to temporarily bind documents or other items, often cloth or clothing, for sewing. In order to pin, the anvil must be shifted so that the staple bends outwards instead of inwards. The staple binds the item with relative security, but can be easily removed by pulling the staple along the plane of the paper. This method varies between staplers, as some anvils need to be simply pushed forward to allow pinning. Why you may need a hole and serration at the end of a tape measure. Well, there are at least 4 cool things you may not know about your tape measure. The nail and screw grab. There is a small slot in the end hook of almost every tape measure. That slot is there to grab onto the head of a nail or screw. This way, if you're by yourself and need to measure a set point on a flat surface that would normally require someone holding the tape, you can sink a screw or nail, hook the end of the tape measure into this slot, and securely and accurately measure from there. Serrated scribing tool. Have you ever noticed the serrated bottom edge of the end hook on your tape measure? If you're using the measure and don't have a marking tool at hand, you can press this edge into your workpiece, scratch it back and forth, and make a mark. The true zero hook feature. That riveted metal tab that holds the end hook on the tape has travel in it for a reason. If you'll notice, the inch marks on the tape actually starts a fraction of an inch short. That's because the thickness of the hook itself is a fraction of an inch. So, if you take an inside measurement, pressing the hook end against the workpiece you're measuring, you will get an accurate measurement. But also, if you hook the end onto a workpiece, the play in the rivets will move the hook out to compensate for hooking onto the material, creating a fraction of an inch gap between the hook and the tape, allowing for an accurate measurement. Always make sure to pull the tape taut when making an outside measurement to make sure the end hook is fully extended. The case of the tape measure is a measure. You are likely already aware of this, but a tape measure's plastic or metal case always has a number on it indicating the exact length of its base. Knowing this, you can use the case itself in doing inside. Why there is an arrow on your car's fuel gauge? There are a few guesses. The first guess is, the arrow indicates the direction that the dots move from empty to full. Most gauges and dials, think your radio volume, for example, work in the opposite fashion, full or more, is to the right, empty or less to the left. While full and empty would seem sufficiently explanatory, car manufacturers further clarify the matter with an arrow, lest drivers get confused. Second guess is, the arrow indicates where the car should go relative to the gas station pump. In other words, if you're driving this car, you should park to the left of the pump when you pull in to fill it up. Third guess, the arrow indicates on which side of the car is the gas tank mounted. This arrow points left, so the car's filler cap is on the left. And the answer is, car manufacturers added this little arrow for drivers to know which side of the car their gas tank lid is. Not only is this incredibly useful when pulling into petrol stations, it's a neat little reminder to those stopping for a top-up during the commuting rush, because we all know that we can do silly things or be forgetful when in full-on stress mode.